Join us for a two-part interview with Joe Goodall and Jazz Schembri, two remarkable women at the early stage of forming a social business venture that provides advice and support for young girls going through puberty. You'll find out how a return to university opened their eyes to the extreme need for help their vulnerable audience had, and how they're translating their lived and academic experience into business with real potential to affect the lives of millions of young girls and women worldwide. Thanks, and I hope you join us.
To start a business, and seriously start a business, not, me as a 15-year-old going to wash the next door neighbour's car, you really do have to love it.
Okay, so let's get into this. You're about to meet Joe Goodall and Jazz Schembri, two first-time entrepreneurs who are creating a social venture, which is a for-profit business with social impact baked into its entire business model. Businesses with good overtly built into its way of thinking is a business trend you'll increasingly find with young entrepreneurs, something that gives me hope that we're heading in the right direction. So here's the thing. A UNESCO report estimates that 1 in 10 girls in sub-Saharan Africa misses school during their menstrual cycle. By some estimates, this equals as much as 20% of a given school year, and many girls drop out of school altogether once they begin menstruating. What we also know is that the education of girls is paramount to overcoming poverty and disrupting cycles of conflict around the world. But it's not just developing economies that struggle to help girls through puberty and all that comes with it. In fact, according to research published in the Journal of Adolescent Health, an unexpectedly large number of girls and tweens report feeling ill-prepared for the changes occurring during puberty, with many girls reporting being without adequate information around what's happening to their bodies, as well as practical suggestions on how to deal with the changes. But how do you turn that into a business? Well, that's what the digital landscape is all about. Over the last 10 years, there's been explosive growth in businesses that operate entirely online. In many instances, the costs of market entry are lower, but more importantly, the ability to reach micro communities of interest, which may measure in the hundreds of thousands, is possible in a way you can't replicate offline. And this means if you can reach those consumers with content and services of value, they'll follow, and other, often very traditional brands will beat a path to your door with money in hand to reach them with you. Now, let's get to the amazing Jazz and Joe and hear what they're up to. So, I would like to welcome two fantastic female entrepreneurs, Joanne Goodall and Jasmine Schembri, who I had the pleasure of meeting through the University of Oxford Saïd Business School. So Joe and Jazz are recent graduates of their MBA program, but through the process of studying, met one another and decided to create a venture, which is, I think, has tremendous potential. That venture is called Luna. And I just want to say, ladies, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
So let's start. So tell us about yourself. Who are you? Where do you come from? And let's start right up to business school. How did you get there?
Go on, Joe. You go first. I always go first. So your turn.
Sure. Sure. So my name's Jo. I'm from Yorkshire, which is in the north of England. So my career has basically been one of consulting, strategy, and a bit of operations. So I started off at Deloitte as a management consultant many years ago now, and did my time in consulting sort of over strategy, operations, and a bit of finance as well, projects. And then I moved internal actually to a fashion retailer and worked in their strategy team, setting the strategy team up and, kind of running with that for a couple of years. I then got to the point where I thought, I want something more. I want to do something a bit different. I want to do something that actually I feel like I'm giving back. And I couldn't really find anything. And then I sort of stumbled across the MBA and I thought that would be a good sort of stepping stone into doing something else. So applied to Oxford, got my place, but had already quit my job and had about a year or so to fill, essentially, kind of waiting to go and do the MBA. So I'm a qualified personal trainer. So I set up a personal training business and did that for a year, absolutely loved it. And then, moved to Oxford and met Jazz, and the rest is history, really.
So what you're suggesting there is you really did start out as a low achiever. So thank you for capturing that, Joe. I appreciate that. Personal trainer as well as consultant working in the fashion industry. Okay, make the rest of us feel
I love
bad.
it.
So, Jazz, what's your story?
Cool. So I'm Jazz. I am from London, South London to be specific. But by background, I'm half Armenian and half Maltese, and anyone who knows me knows that I'm incredibly proud of my heritage, so I try and get it in wherever I can. And by background, I'm a bit nervous to say this, but I didn't know Joe at the time, but I also started my career as a consultant at Deloitte as well, but in a different team to Joe, so our paths never crossed until the MBA. I started my role in the human capital team, so all things people. I then dipped into strategy and operations a bit, but I was lucky enough to go and do secondment into our proposition area where I work with big clients, coming up with some of their cool startup ideas. And that's where my interest for maybe something a bit more entrepreneurial really began. I loved stuff that was a bit more customer focused, maybe a bit more creative and fast paced. So I thought, okay, maybe there's a life for me outside of consulting, but I didn't really know in what realm that was. Was it my own venture? Was it at an accelerator? Was it in VC? And so similar to Joe, started looking at my options, and I thought that the MBA would probably be the best platform for me to figure out, okay, which route am I going down? Or maybe it's actually none of these routes and I'll stay and continue being a consultant. So decided it was the MBA, didn't have the funds to go immediately, so decided to freelance for a bit prior to the MBA. So I got a touch of the entrepreneurial life there, a little bit of a hustle going on. So did that for about 18 months and then, landed at Oxford, got introduced to Joe, realised we had very similar backgrounds. I was like, gosh, I really need to sit down and figure out, are you living a parallel life to me? And we just clicked from day one. And that was me on the MBA, and I really sort of threw myself at all entrepreneurial experiences. Honestly, didn't think we'd come out with a startup, but I'm so happy that we ended up sort of taking this forward. So yes, here we are.
So this is the moment where we finally reveal that Joe was a sister of yours that was separated at birth. She too was born in Malta. Ladies, just.
I mean, it literally could be. I mean, we really did have. I mean, even our hobbies that we just didn't even like. We've got quite niche hobbies as well, like musical theatre, and we're both into it. Like, just so, we could have been separated at birth.
So, did you? You touched on a little bit, Jazz, but I'm curious, Joe, for both of you, really. Like, had you ever thought, one day I want to become an entrepreneur, I want to run my own business? Like, how much of that came into your mind before business school? And did either of you come from an entrepreneurial background?
Yeah, so for me, definitely, it's been my whole life. I've always thought I'm going to have my own business. I was that kid that had, went around the neighborhood, washing cars, doing little shops in my roof, and made my parents come and buy little things from the shop that I'd made. I used to just try and make money all sorts of ways as a kid. So I've always thought I would love to have my own business. My dad has his own business. My mum's side of the family, they are all sort of entrepreneurs. So it is kind of what I have been brought up in. But I think when I left university, I needed that sort of experience first, I think, to, in a business, in the corporate world, and just seeing how things are done. And then I thought, once I've done this, I'll go and start something. But I never had the idea. That was always my problem. I kind of did all these sort of like little hustle things as a kid, but obviously they were never going to be anything like, there's only so many cars you can wash. But yeah, I just needed the idea, which obviously came with the MBA when I met Jazz. So.
Nice. And Jazz, what about you?
No, I think super similar to Joe. Anyone who meets an Armenian knows that we are sort of tradespeople. We've got our own businesses, whether that's our own firms or restaurants and whatnot. So I think it's in the blood, Robert. But similar to Joe, it was always coming up with the right idea. I think in my previous life as a consultant, I was always coming up with in my view, innovative solutions to improve like processes, or I'd be sort of thinking of other ideas and trying to pitch them. And I think whilst that's not bringing an idea to market, that's, still a bit of entrepreneurial spirit there. But it was really trying to find the right idea that I could dedicate the sort of next X years of my life to, but also having the confidence to do that. And I think now you leave uni and there is a wealth of accelerators and information and people to support you becoming a startup or an entrepreneur. But when I left, that wasn't the sort of norm, and it was very much go into a corporate career and then you might become an entrepreneur. So I think if I was reborn now and coming out of undergrad, perhaps I would have had the confidence to just go with one of the ideas I've had whilst growing up and launching it, really.
Do you know, yesterday I sat on some coaching panels for a university, and a number of these students, they're all undergrads, and a number of these students were talking about the challenge they have in the way that they've been asked to apply for jobs now. So basically they have to go online and a question is posed to them on the screen and they record their answer. And then there's psychometric tests being conducted at the same time. And then there's an AI program that filters through them and chooses who goes on to a face-to-face interview. And I listened to this. I was like, you know what? Nothing says that you're going to be nothing. Nothing says that you're going to be a drone and a faceless number in a corporation more than a corporation using those techniques to actually speak to you about your suitability for their business.
That's wild.
I know I found it really nauseating because it's just another example of these large companies which are efficient, but increasingly being outmaneuvered by just smarter, more in-touch ways of doing business. I just find it shocking. So I'm so glad to hear that you guys have chosen an entrepreneurial path because, not only, I think that it broadens your toolkit as somebody who is an interested in business, but it also represents an ability to create companies that think differently in all dimensions of engaging with people. So that's my soapbox for the moment, but let's talk about your venture, Luna. So just tell us about it. What is it? What is it trying to become? Because I know it hasn't yet launched. And where did the idea come from?
Go on, Jazz, you can go first on this one.
Cool. So Luna is an app that educates and supports young girls and non-binary people aged 9 to 16 through life's toughest journey, puberty. And we do that by giving young people access to timely and relevant content. We empower them to go on our platform and to buy products, to recommend products, and to review products that they continue to be targeted with on social media. And we give them the opportunity to ask questions and get answers from medically backed professionals. And this covers all realms of puberty. So all things periods, skincare, hair growth, nutrition, hormones, that whole suite. And to be completely honest, Joe and I were absolutely shocked to find out that there was no one really servicing this target group or offering a product like this, especially as we went through it, almost 15, 16 years ago. You'd think that someone would have thought of this by now. And so after our research, after speaking to a bunch of people, we just thought, gosh, we really have to do something because in our eyes, being a teenager now is 10 times harder. You've got social media out there, that's with you 24/7. And we just wanted to do something. So Joe, I don't know if you want to tell a little bit more about how the idea was born. Hand over to you.
Sure. Well, the idea was born out of our university experience. So as part of our MBA, one of the modules everyone had to complete was this entrepreneurship module. And basically what happens in that, the business school said, put yourself into teams and come up with a business idea. And then at the end of the term, we had to pitch it to investors. So so Jazz and I, we kind of went team first. We didn't really have an idea. We got together as a team, and then 3 others joined us as well. So it was a group of 5 women. And the idea came about that, we were all just discussing potential ideas for this project. And, we were just talking about what our issues were with, our lives at the moment, really, and health issues that we were having, at 30 years old. And a lot of them, they did seem to be issues that actually, if we'd known about some of this information earlier in our lives, we could have perhaps prevented it from happening now, or even just given us the knowledge to know what to do now. So we were finding ourselves at 30 years old still being like, oh, what should we do about this? Or what should I do about that? And, these, exactly, issues that could have perhaps been prevented with more education when we were younger. So we just started, looking around to see what kind of education young women get now in schools, especially. And it's amazing, really. The syllabus doesn't seem to have changed one bit in the sort of, 15 years since Jazz and I had the education, but even longer than that, as in our parents and potentially even grandparents, it's just the same. And there's not to say that obviously the female body has changed, that much in, 75 years, but access to information that is out there now, and especially misinformation that is out there now, has changed a lot. And these girls and non-binary people are getting access to information that is just completely wrong and not helpful at all, and just leaves them feeling scared and worried, upset. And so, once we did more research into this, we realized that there's a massive problem out there. So that's where the idea came from.
So what's interesting about that is, in a way, it has been an issue that's existed for a long time. It has often been a subject that women have had to deal with at their very young state on their own in many cases. But what you're suggesting there is at one time there was a complete lack of information, and now there is the growth of misinformation. So I'm curious, what's better, a lack of information or misinformation?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, neither, is it? That's the thing, is both of them are kind of situations you don't want to be in, because actually if you have no information, you can grow up in a way that actually you have absolutely no idea what's happening to you. And especially at this, these years where so much happens and changes to you, both physically and mentally and emotionally. And if you've got no idea, you can be left leaving scared and confused. But then, in the generation that we have now, where they've got access to TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, where, you're getting sent all these different posts, which are completely wrong, then actually you'll, find girls and young women who are doing all sorts to their bodies because actually they're just following blindly what's being fed to them on TikTok, because some influencer has decided that if you, do X, Y, and Z, then this will happen to you, with absolutely no, context or medical background or anything like that. And it's, I'm not sure which is better, actually. No information or misinformation, but I don't think either are great.
Do you know, it's funny, I have to say I'm so looking forward to the launch of Luna. As a father of 3 daughters, my strategy for dealing with the subject is I simply leave the house until the questions blow over, and then I come back. And then I leave them to TikTok to discover how to address the issue. So please, if you can just accelerate the launch, I would.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed this first part of our interview with Jazz and Joe, co-founders of Luna, a business that's helping educate young women through a vital part of their development, and that's puberty. Click on the second part of our interview to hear more of their fascinating story.